What's up, guys? Kevin here from KevsPicks.com, and we're on to week 8 of the NFL season. In this video, I've got my DraftKings and FanDuel NFL week 8 picks. So for the video, I'm going to be talking about DraftKings, but I do like these guys on FanDuel as well. So I've got my Fantasy Labs model pulled up here. It's the Sports Geek model. You'll have access to this if you have a Fantasy Labs account. If you don't have an account yet, I highly recommend you sign up. I'll leave my Fantasy Labs link in the YouTube description below. And also make sure you're signed up for my emails. I email out more picks, usually around 11 a.m. Eastern time on Sunday morning. So if you haven't signed up, just click on the DFS emails link in the YouTube description as well. All right, so let's get right into my picks. Starting off with my quarterback of the week. I'm going to be going with Cam Newton, 6,600. The Panthers are in Tampa Bay, currently a 1-point underdog, so it's pretty much a pick 'em with a decently high total here at 46.5 points. Tampa Bay has been pretty brutal defensively all year, especially against the pass, and Cam Newton is starting to play a little better. I think he plays quite a bit better when he's rushing the ball, and lately he has been rushing the ball a bit. So you can see his DraftKings scores here. Started off pretty brutal. Hasn't really been throwing the ball too well overall. A couple good games here. But when he does run the ball, it opens up a lot for him. So started off pretty slow, then got 37, 29, 23 DraftKings points. Didn't have a great game against the Bears. Pretty brutal game, actually. But I look for him to bounce back here against the Bucs, who have been pretty brutal defensively and are without a couple key pieces in their secondary. So I like Cam Newton quite a bit, and I'll talk about who I'm going to stack him with when we get to wide receivers. All right, so on to running back here. I do like a couple other guys that are going to be popular that I just didn't want to mention in this video. McCoy and Zeke, both going to be popular. I think they're both in great spots. I'll have a lot of them as well. But I wanted to throw a lower owned running back out there this week. So I'm going to go with Jordan Howard, 6,800. The Bears are in New Orleans. They are 10-point underdogs, so that's going to scare a lot of people away. But I still think Howard could have a pretty big game for that price at 6,800 on DraftKings. The implied team total there for Chicago isn't too high, 18.5. But New Orleans has been a lot better against the pass than they have been against the run. So I think Jordan Howard could be in a good spot. He does have the upside. He is pretty much a workhorse back there in Chicago most of the time. You can see here 21 carries, 36 carries, 19, 18, 23. And then as far as DraftKings scoring, 21 and 35 this year, showing some upside. He has had a couple duds in there, but if we go back to last year, he was overall pretty consistent. Again, did have a couple pretty low scoring games, but he did show some upside, 28, 33, 32 DraftKings points, 21 DraftKings points. So he has the upside, and at 6,800 in a pretty good matchup in New Orleans in what should be a high scoring game, I think he could make for a sneaky GPP play. And then at receiver here, I'll start off with my stack with Cam Newton. I'm going to stack him with Devin Funchess, 5,900. Most people, if they're playing Cam, they might go towards Kelvin Benjamin. But I like Funchess a little better at a cheaper price, 5,900. If we look at his game log here, he is seeing a lot of targets since, if we take out the first game here, 6, 10, 9, 8, 9, 8. So looks like he's kind of the number one receiver in Carolina, and he's been a little more productive, I think, than Kelvin Benjamin. I just like him a little better. You can see here a couple pretty decent DraftKings scoring games, 26 and 18. Some red zone targets as well. So at 5,900 against a secondary that's hurting in Tampa Bay, I think that's a pretty good price for him, and probably my number one stacking option with Cam Newton. I also like Dixon. I also like Benjamin, but Funchess would be my number one. And then a cheap wide receiver that I think will be somewhat popular, projected 9 to 12%, but I wanted to include him here, is Josh Doctson from the Redskins going against Dallas. They're at home. Small underdogs, 1.5 point underdogs, a high total here, so they're still expected to put up some points. And Josh Doctson is kind of turning into the number one receiver there in Washington. He had the majority of the snaps last week over Pryor. Got 5 targets. He's gotten a couple red zone targets the last few games, and he's a pretty athletic receiver. So at 3,900, if he is going to be the main target there for Cousins, really like that at the price. Might be a little risky, but definitely like it for GPPs just because of how cheap he is, and he's in a good matchup. And then at tight end here, I've got a guy who is projected to be somewhat low owned, Jared Cook, 3,900. Oakland's in Buffalo. You can see Cook's projected ownership is 5 to 8%. The Raiders are 2.5 point underdogs. This total is pretty high at 46, and Oakland is expected to put up some points. Their implied team total is 21 points. So he's in a pretty good spot, pretty good price, and he's had a lot of usage this year. If we look at his game log, his targets 5, 6, 6, 8, 6, 3, and 7. Coming off a pretty big game here against Kansas City, so it might drive his ownership up a little bit. He had 107 yards in that game, 19.7 DraftKings points, but that doesn't bother me too much. I don't think he'll be too overly owned. You can see his red zone targets as well. He's gotten quite a few of those. Just a big athletic tight end that I like, and I like the price. I like the matchup in Buffalo and what should be a decently high scoring game. So I like that play at tight end for GPPs this week. Jared Cook, 3,900. All right, then at DST, I like the Seahawks at 3,200. There are some higher priced defenses I like. I like the Eagles, I like the Bengals. But for this video, I wanted a little bit of a cheaper defense to talk about. So Seahawks at 3,200, they're ranking well in the Sports Geek model. They've got a pretty good matchup here against Houston. Deshaun Watson has looked great this year, but he's in his toughest matchup yet, going in Seattle on the road in a tough environment. The Seahawks are 6.5 point favorites. Houston's implied team total is 19.5. And if we look at the Seahawks game log here, they've been pretty solid over the last couple games. Last time out at home, they put up 20 points against the Colts, 14 against the Rams, 7 against the Giants. So maybe a little better matchups there, but still overall, if you look back at their game log here, going back to last year, they're pretty consistent, usually scoring pretty well. So when we can get a little bit of a discount here on the Seahawks at 3,200 at home, I think it's worth taking. So that's going to be my favorite cheaper defense of the week, even though they're not too cheap. 3,200 is a pretty good price for them. And that wraps up my video. Make sure you guys are checking your emails for those picks. Again, if you haven't signed up, click on that DFS emails link in the YouTube description. Good luck this week, guys. Hopefully you make some money, and talk to you later.